Howdy, all. We are back. Sorry about yesterday. Travel day for me going up to Toronto to cover the Leafs Blues game, which we'll talk about a little later. And the weather was not exactly great in the Golden Horseshoe, as they call it. Russ, you had something to get us started?
Yeah, two things. First thing, as we head into the championship weekend for the NFL, and they certainly had some good games last week. We can't deny it. There's a really good chance, actually. There's a better than 3 out of 4 chance that some team is going to win the Super Bowl for the first time this year. Unless you think it's the New England Patriots,
which I do,
the rest of the field hasn't. And so, I think looking at that, I looked at all teams and noticed that really nobody's given the Jacksonville Jaguars a chance. And I got to tell you, I'm not a betting man, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that 9.5-point spread is baloney. And it's baloney because Jacksonville's got the best third down defense in the league. They've got the best secondary in the league. They've got the best rookie running back in the league. There's so many things, and people can go to sportsology.com if they want to read the article. At the end of the day, there's so much there that really New England should only be a 3-point to a 4-point favorite based on what's going on now, not what based on Tom Brady and Bill Belichick have done in the past. That's what they're basing it on, the past.
I don't know about 3 or 4. I would say probably less than a touchdown. But being somebody who in a previous life or earlier in my life did gamble on football, that line is there to attract the Jacksonville better. Oh God, I'm going to get 9.5. I still think New England's going to win. I don't know if they're going to win by 9.5, but I think as the game gets closer and there's money coming in on Jacksonville, that line might come down to 7.5, maybe even 7. And if it comes down to 7, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, Peter.
Yeah, I don't think New England's going to win. I think we've seen them enough over the past few years where things have sort of whittled down to very nitty-gritty items for them to win. Now, this season, they've looked like world beaters, right? But they haven't really faced anybody. Tennessee was really not a complete team. If people thought that was going to be a tough game, that's crazy. This is now going to be their first tough game, and maybe their only one that they face in the playoffs. But I think this game will be really hard for them to win, really hard.
Oh, it'll be murder to win. Yeah. And I think if they're looking at doing anything, you got to look to their defensive coordinator, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's the one who shut down the Patriots twice.
Yeah.
And if he can get that out of the team, then it could be real interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, they beat the Steelers all 3 games. Twice during the regular season and also in the playoffs. So I think they had Pittsburgh's number again when Jacksonville Buffalo set back the NFL about 3 decades. I mean, it was
it did, but then it didn't.
It did. I mean, I'm a Bills fan. It's like, come on.
From your jaded
Tyrod
perspective,
Taylor, who couldn't throw the ball in a stiff wind.
No, but from your jaded perspective, it did, right?
No, not jaded.
You're jaded.
Not jaded at all.
No, you're jaded. But here's what I think the bigger picture on that game was. I think Jacksonville needed confidence. They got confidence. Because then going into Pittsburgh, they were loaded with confidence. And this is coming from against a team that literally, there were guys on the Steelers before that game ever had kickoff were basically saying, we're looking forward to facing the Patriots. We're going to beat the Patriots this time. Yet they couldn't beat the Jaguars. And it's not saying the Jaguars are bad. They're a really good team.
Yeah.
I just think when you uncover it, people just don't want to give the Jaguars a chance because they look at Tom Brady and say, no, it's just going to be another Super Bowl for Brady, and I don't think they're looking at it objectively.
The thing is, I think when you look at the Jaguars, you look at the team, and then you go, oh, Bortles, right? Yeah. And Bortles had a great game. It's not his fault that Pittsburgh kept getting back into it. That's got nothing to do with him. He put up 42 points?
45?
Okay.
45.
And this
you put up 45 points in a game, you're going to win 95% of your games.
Yeah,
that's not Bortles' problem.
And I talked to a Steeler fan last night, and he basically wants their head coach fired because they dropped the ball. And now, that's excuses, and I get that. But see, the thing is, and we'll start talking hockey here in a second. I think that Belichick and Matt Patricia, who's their defensive coordinator, are going to look at the game film against that and the defense that the Bills played against the Jaguars in the first week. And what they did was basically Bortles beat us. And he couldn't until the third and fourth quarter when he started running the ball because he could not throw further than 10 yards before a Bills defensive back was on him. They stacked eight players. They stopped the running back. I think New England can do that because Belichick is a devil. He does that. When you think that he can't stop another team, he does. So, I mean,
I mean, we've seen them lose. Look, as a Jet fan, they've beaten the Patriots a couple times, once in the playoffs. So I've seen them lose. Here's the thing. I think what Bortles learned in that Pittsburgh game is that he has more players that he could utilize on that offense that he even tried to utilize against the Bills. And that's why even if they run with that same game plan, I don't know if it's going to be as successful because I think Bortles learned something in the Pittsburgh game that wasn't available to him, or at least he didn't think was available to him in the Buffalo game.
Maybe he'll gain confidence. All I know is that he couldn't get the ball to any of them against the Bills. So, all right, let's get started here. Eck will be joining us any moment. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, January 17th, 2018.
I'm Peter Tessie up here in balmy Winnipeg today.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Jello in snowy Buffalo, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. And I promise we will not talk about Kid Rock being the singer at the NHL All-Star game.
But you just did.
I didn't talk about it. I just mentioned it.
I want to get this out there right now. Bob McKenzie, I'll say was, because he hasn't tweeted about it yet, was a huge Kid Rock fan. Mm-hmm. Huge. And you go search Bob McKenzie Kid Rock on Twitter, and you'll see a whole bunch of comments about Bob McKenzie's a Kid Rock fan, all from about 2010 and 2009. Yeah. It's hilarious.
Bob McKenzie's a big music fan, very big music fan. So, and he's not my cup of tea, but anyway. Okay, let's get started with the big news that popped up late yesterday. Actually, I think I was in the press room at ACC when. The news came down. I think it was Mark Lazarus out of Chicago who reported that Corey Crawford, Hawks goaltender, two-time Stanley Cup winner, may be out for the season with vertigo-related symptoms. Now, Crawford's been out for I think about a month, and obviously he's their number one, and there's not a lot behind him. And we're not talking about Anton Forsberg here, Russ. So this puts Stan Bowman in a difficult position because you've got Forsberg and you got Jeff Glass, who I think maybe this year's Andrew Hammond, who's played pretty well since getting called up. He's an experienced guy. But, other than some AHL stints and the long stint in the KHL, he doesn't, this is his first kick of the can in the NHL. Eck talked about it in his blog saying that now Chicago, may be out there looking for a goaltender. But, Peter, let me start with you first. Chicago is a team right now, even with Crawford, that had holes. And I don't know whether Bowman's going to go down the road of selling a young asset or two to bring in a goaltender like a Robin Lehner. What do you think?
Yeah, he might. Chicago's rounding into form a little bit here. They're not playing horrible hockey. They still have a sniffing chance. Their MO is to go for it. Stan Bowman's MO is to always keep his team competitive. Other GMs keep finding a way to help Stan Bowman. I don't see why this would be any different.
It's different because of the position. This year, goaltending, it's easy for us to say, right, hey, just go out and get a goalie. But how many teams have done it so far? How many teams, you know what I mean? Like the Islanders need a goalie. They haven't done it.
Not yet.
I just think it's because of prices and they're just going to wait, right? Yeah. Like it's more about where you are in the market and the cycle of things as to what you're willing.
Okay, well, and if that's the case,
goaltending's an obvious glare. So
okay, but then the price just went up. Then if they all of a sudden are looking for a starting goalie too, so
but you were never gonna trade for someone while you still had Crawford. So the price always goes up when you got an injury.
Well, okay,
you have a need, but someone's got to set the market first and then go from there.
Let's
there's not enough guys to set the market. I think let's start there.
Let's talk about a team that you're close to, Peter, that has 3 goaltenders, because Hutchinson's been sitting with the Manitoba Moose for a couple months.
Yep.
Question is Michael Hutchinson an improvement over Jeff Glass and Anton Forsberg? I don't think I'm not sure he is.
Not enough.
I mean, who knows what Jeff Glass is going to do for another 10 games or so,
sure.
Right? That's still an iffy proposition. But is he an improvement? Maybe, but he might just buy you more time. Is more what you're doing is you're just buying yourself more time. And that's part of the risk for someone, particularly in Bowman's case. I don't know what the risk is if it, and one of the thoughts is Hutchinson could be looked at to go to Edmonton or even New York. And I don't know if it solves a problem. It just buys more time.
Well, but here's the thing. All right. If you buy more time in Chicago, then that's presumably thinking the vertigo is going to go away and Crawford will be back for the playoffs. But you know how it is with vertigo. We see it when it affects athletes. Like when it affects a regular human being, right, a person, they end up having it for a very long time. But they get through life because they can still work their job and everything else. This is different, right? You have to be like superhuman to do the job of a goaltender. So to have vertigo in that, it's not a guarantee that it goes away by the playoffs. Like this is something that doctors have a hard time getting under control for anybody.
And all of a sudden, in the last couple of days, Luongo has been out for a little bit, but the backup right now for Florida behind James Reimer, I believe, is Harry Sateri.
Yeah,
that's how you pronounce his name. And he's had a cup of coffee with San Jose a couple years back, but he's not. I don't think he's an NHL.
He was the top-ranked European goalie in his draft, and I think he got drafted second as the European goalie in his draft. I interviewed the guy. I thought back then he has some talent. He probably still has some talent, but it's not enough.
Right.
I don't think it's enough.
We have Chicago now. We have the Islanders still. The situation, I don't know how clear it is regarding Colorado, because right now Varlamov is out. Jonathan Bernier is stepping in as the number 1, and he's been a number 1 in the past. But for a team that's being in that realm of competing for a wild card spot, if you go more than a couple weeks with Jonathan Bernier, that's danger territory. So I think the market might be a little bigger in terms of need than we thought maybe a week ago, because injuries. And unfortunately, with the news that today, Matt Murray's dad passing away, he's on indefinite leave from the Penguins. That means Tristan Jarry is the number 1. Casey DeSmith gets called up from Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. And, maybe now Jim Rutherford again is looking for, a Chad Johnson or some veteran goaltender out there to step in and be the backup, because I don't think they have a lot of confidence in Casey DeSmith. So, I mean, I think, the goaltending market could be a little busier, and, maybe a guy like Hutchinson or Eddie Lack get moved.
Yeah, I think those guys can get moved, but I think you're just talking about like a minor upgrade. What's funny is when you look up vertigo, LeBron James says he suffers from it, and he might be the most successful case of vertigo where it doesn't seem to affect him. But then you look at like some baseball players, Nick Asaski, like there's been some names that if you remember when they got it, they were never the same. And so I'm not saying that Corey Crawford will never be the same. I'm just saying it's so unpredictable that even just getting a goalie for them is probably not worth trading the asset. I'm not saying you have to give up the season. I just think I can't trade another second round pick on the hopes that I'm going to go 1 round in the playoffs. Like that's what I'm doing. Now for the Islanders, I'll tell you what, I looked at the numbers, right? And it looks like Halak, because he has a better save percentage, is the better goalie, but he's really not. Halak's got 13 wins in like 27 starts, 29 games. And Greiss has 10 wins and a lot less starts. What that tells me is that the team probably plays a little better in front of Greiss, and Halak's getting more time because he's the more proven of the two right now. But hold on. And I think Greiss has probably played better in his wins than Halak plays overall. And to me, I would stop playing Halak. Say if that Devils game didn't show you anything last night, I would stop playing him.
At some point with goalies, you have to make a choice. And having watched Winnipeg go through a boatload of problems, solutions, and band-aids over the last 6 years, at some point you have to make a choice of what you're going to do when things aren't working. And in this case, like for the Islanders, this is a great example. Maybe just run with Greiss and you say, this is what it is, guys. And you got to get comfortable with it and move forward.
Because he's got 10 wins in 21 games, so at least he's winning.
You don't have a solution that's going to say, boom, here's this guy who's going to come in and solve your problems.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how much better that the Islanders play in front of Greiss, because the last game that I saw, Greiss playing in Montreal, I think they had over the Canadians, who are not exactly an offensive dynamo, had over 50 shots on them. So they didn't really play a lot of effective defense in front of them, and they blew a lead, and I think it was Tavares scored in overtime to get them the win. So I mean, I think it's a two-pronged problem with the Islanders. I think their defense is weakened by the fact that Boychuk is out and DeHaan is out for the year.
Well, that's the thing. They have so many injuries.
And their goaltending is average at best.
And that's what I would answer. I would answer to Thomas in the chat room is, he's like, well, with the defense the Islanders have, it doesn't matter. Well, because they have so many injuries, and they just lost Shane Prince too. At the end of the day, though, I still think this team plays better with Greiss, and certainly they did last year, than Halak. I think it just boils down to that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's, you know, and that's something that, like, if Garth Snow and company could pull off a deal to bring in a goaltender, wouldn't they have done it by now, given the situation the Islanders are in? You would think. So going back to your original point, Russ, that the market's there, but the market's not moving.
Unless the prices, I mean, and we've had indications about this, you know, currently about, you know, the ridiculous prices that teams are asking for certain players. I mean, if the prices are too high, then maybe they're waiting for the prices to go down as February 26th gets closer. Right now, you know, teams can afford to be unreasonable, and I'll give you an example of that after we finish our goaltender discussion. But I think that might be the case.
Yeah. Well, and they're going to be unreasonable until there's a reason to be reasonable, right?
Sure.
That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, in a total non sequitur, because I just got a text, the Braves have a new mascot called Chop. He looks like the second or third cousin to Mr. Met. It's a complete copy. That's all I have to say. That's my statement on
Chop. And that accentuates the thing that is most unpopular about the Braves, which is the tomahawk chop. So way to go, Atlanta. Okay, speaking of unreasonable, Pierre LeBrun from TSN reported yesterday or the day before that the Buffalo Sabres are looking for not one, not two, not three, but four pieces for Evander Kane. Okay, Peter, start laughing. No, this is this is the thing. We've only seen 2 first-round picks, and then there's a caveat here. One was involving I believe the Hamonic deal, and the other one is a conditional pick involving the Matt Duchene deal, traded for the upcoming draft. The Sabres reportedly want a first-round pick as part of the deal, and LeBrun reported this morning that he's talked to NHL general managers who are interested in Kane as a rental option, and none of them are willing to give up a first-round pick at this point.
No, why would you? But and particularly in this year, and Russ, you can always expand on what this draft is looking like in terms of how far down you go. But say let's just use an obvious, logical thing for a team that needs some goal scoring. Would give up something to get Evander Kane. Let's just use LA. Even this year, what does LA need more than anything really in its future is to keep having youth come in. Trading away your first round pick this year to get Evander Kane for a rental, and you may be the one team that you could probably sign him again, cap concerns not considered right now, because of where you are, lifestyle, that whole thing. But does it do you any favors to get a head start on this? Like, based on what you'd have to pay?
Here's what I would answer for the one thing, Peter. It's a defense-rich draft. So if I'm a team that really needs offense, I don't want to be outside of like 35 picks in this draft. If I'm outside of 35 picks in this draft, There'll be offense to uncover, but there won't be like guaranteed offense where you get a guy and say, all right, I know I can get, you know what I mean? Like the rest is going to be projecting. And so I don't want to be beyond that point.
There are two scenarios, in terms of teams that could be interested in a player like Kane. Obviously, either one of them is somebody who needs offense. One is somebody who is going for it, like Pittsburgh going for a third cup, and they realize that after this window they're going to be taking a dramatic step back, and they're like, okay, this is our chance to win a third straight cup. We'll give up a Daniel Sprong and a draft pick and something else to have that score and to add to our group right now. Or, as Russ was saying, a team like, say, Carolina, and I don't know if Carolina is interested in Evander Kane, but a team like Carolina that's got a boatload of young prospects, especially defensemen, but needs scoring, and they just lost Aho. Although Ron Francis is saying he's not going to get taken to the cleaners, but okay, you've got all these defensemen, and I don't think you can sign all of them. And, at a certain point, you have to make a move to bring in offense. So a team like them, or a team like Minnesota, who's got young prospects, or St. Louis, who's got a lot of young prospects, those type of teams, they can afford to trade a draft pick and a good prospect to get an Evander Kane as a rental. But Botterill is looking at the market and seeing, okay, Minnesota gave up a number one for Martin Hansel, and that's what he's going to hold out for until the 11th hour in case he doesn't get it. But that's what these teams are out there looking for. They're looking to hit the home run.
Right.
Yeah. That's fair, and I don't think there's a rebuttal for that.
Here, let's use like Elias Lindholm as an example, right? He's now 23, came out of the 2013 draft, 5th overall. So far, his best season is 17 goals. He's giving you double-digit goals every year, but he's not giving you 25.
No.
And that's sort of what I'm talking about when I'm saying 35 picks. You're probably not finding a 25, 30-goal scorer after that. And so that's what you have to sort of now make the decision as a GM, like, hey, am I going to go for the guaranteed thing and sort of pass on the opportunity of getting like up to a second liner in the NHL, or am I going to just pass on Evander Kane? And, based on Kane's contract and the fact that you're renting him, you've got to be pretty sure you're getting to the conference finals, to me, if you're giving up something like that.
And that's why, like a Pittsburgh, it makes sense because, but I don't know how many young assets that they have. And Botterill's obviously, he was an assistant GM there for a number of years, so he probably knows, he knows those prospects like the back of his hand. So
one of the interesting things, just speaking of Kane, is are there enough teams out there who have there are teams that could use Kane, but wouldn't have a place to fit him, right? Like the Leafs, in theory, could load up and take a guy like him to add depth, but they're just trading away from the strength. They're swapping parts, right? They really need to load up and add depth. And that's the weird thing with Kane is I can't think of too many teams that would go after him who have an alternatively deep area in the team to draw from to satisfy Buffalo's request.
Well, okay. Well, you see, that's why I use the Capitals, because while they have offensively skilled players, they don't have physically offensively skilled players. Right. Wilson is one of them, but he's not like highly skilled.
Yeah.
So if they got Kane, it would be a lot different than, like Burakovsky, the way he scores goals. I think that's the part that you'll have to look at here.
Right. But do they have the depth to send something back?
Oh, yeah. They're loaded with prospects. Yeah.
I don't think they want to give up Vrana in a deal for Kane because Vrana is somebody they can hold on for 5 or 6 years. But, and I don't know, a guy like Riley Barb. I mean, they could trade Samsonov, but I think he's the future.
No, they won't trade Samsonov.
Right. He's the future in net for them. But they have young prospects. I think they're a reasonably deep organization, but the thing is, I think they've been exposed because of all the losses that they had in free agency, with Shattenkirk and Schmidt and a few and Alsner and a few others, and trading Johansson. I mean, they've been weakened. Their depth is not there. I have to touch on this because I just saw.
I'll give you one just to give you an example for good depth of a position that you could use. Lucas Johansson. as an example.
There we go.
A lot of teams would love to get Lucas Johansson in a trade. Mm-hmm. Buffalo would certainly accept Lucas Johansson in a trade for Evander Kane, I believe.
Yeah. I saw this just before the show, and Russ, if we needed anything to bolster our criticism of the Arizona Coyotes, the comments of Louis Domingue, their former goaltender, who was called up by Tampa Bay in recent days, should, it provides more ammo. Now, I'm just reading this. He was interviewed. The Coyotes acquired Scott Wedgwood from New Jersey, and this is a quote from Domingue. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just another move to get stronger at the position. Then I was on waivers, and that's where the story gets interesting. I didn't get claimed. They didn't want to send me to the American Hockey League. They wanted to keep me at home while they were trying to deal me somewhere. For a good week and a half, I was left without ice or a gym or any support from the team. Mm-hmm. I was just home waiting a call. They told me to rent my own ice. Oh. I was there. I gave a call to my old friend Shane Doan. He came out with me on the ice in the afternoon with his son. I rented ice at midnight.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh because it's sort of a desperate situation, but it's funny that Shane Doan brought his son. That's awesome. Yeah.
I rented the ice at midnight just to shoot pucks and skate around because I was tired of being at home.
Wow.
Yeah, this, honestly, if you need an example of this, of a completely rudderless organization, there you go. I mean, Russ, what is the deal with the Coyotes? What is it?
It's all financial, but I will say this. This is where it sheds some real good light, and Domingue's got some guts because this could really, hurt him in the marketplace by coming out with this. But again, he probably felt so desperate, like, what's the hell? I should peel back the curtain on this. Like, everybody thinks that the NHL players are probably rich to the point where they should all have their own rink in their own house, right? But they don't. And so, yeah, for a goalie to just be sort of sitting around not playing, that's maybe the worst possible situation to even deal a goalie. Because, again, if I'm calling a team about a goalie, I got to go see him play. And if he's not playing in the AHL, why isn't he playing in the ECHL or somewhere? Yeah. That's when you look at the organization and say, okay, you know what? Any other organization would have sent him to some team to play while he's still under their hold, and they didn't do that. So clearly that's where, with Arizona, they don't get the support. Players don't get enough of the support, and that's where it shows. It only shows when, I guess, you're on the outs. But again, to be able to trade somebody, he's got to be able to play.
Yeah. UC Jokinen, who's been a man on the move this year, was claimed off of waivers once again, this time by the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, apparently, Russ, Sonny Milano had an oblique muscle injury from last week, and is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. So the claim of Jokinen was to fill his spot on the roster. This is a guy who used to be very effective, especially in shootouts. But I think probably it's the case of he's lost a step, and now he's a borderline NHLer. But I don't know. And maybe he can help a team like Columbus, who I think is. I mean, I don't know if he can score anymore, but I think he's at least a veteran guy who knows his way around the league.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Maybe that's somebody they look at. I am a little distracted because I saw this, and I don't want to pile on the Coyotes, but this is a weird situation that I just noticed. With their ECHL affiliation, they literally, in 2015, it was with Rapid City, and then last year they signed a 1-year affiliation agreement with Fort Wayne. So I kind of wonder where that even stands, and maybe that's why Domingue didn't get sent there, because maybe it's not a great relationship with the Coyotes and Fort Wayne, considering it's a 1-year affiliation. I mean, Peter, can you think of a team that's ever had like a 1-year affiliate? Usually they sign a deal, it's for like 3 years.
Yeah. I know at one point when Brian Burke was the GM of the Canucks, the relationship between the Manitoba Moose and the Canucks was very thin, and they also very iffy, and they also didn't renew. They weren't going to renew their affiliation. In the end, they did, but it's rare. That's for sure.
I mean, look, St. Louis, I guess this year when they were in between, they did the shared affiliation. We talked about that, but that's even so rare, and especially for St. Louis, that you knew it wasn't going to last. But this is like a 1-year affiliation that they signed.
Yeah. Well, I know that Toronto, like a few years back, there was a lot of talk about Toronto. Their ECHL team was in Orlando, the Solar Bears, and there's an ECHL team in Brampton, the Brampton Beast, and they had only had, I think it was a 1-year affiliation agreement with Montreal, and there was talk about possibly the Leafs wanting to move into Brampton because of the close proximity of the team, but then I believe Brampton re-upped with Montreal, and the Leafs signed an extension with Orlando. So, there's a lot of things going around, but it, if you need another sign of the Arizona Coyotes, pinching pennies.
Here's who the goalies are for the Fort Wayne Comets. There's Garrett Bardis, who's a 1989 birthday. So you can't tell me that he is a prospect.
Yeah.
He was just added this year as a free agent. So clearly, if he's taking time away from Louis Domingue, something's wrong. And then Michael Hauser, who, was drafted late. He was considered a prospect for a while. Probably not anymore. These are the guys that basically are getting ice time instead of Louis Domingue while he was still with them.
Okay, let's talk about some of the games last night. Start with the one that I was at because the Leaf fans are not exactly pleased right now with the way the team is playing. They had a 1-0 lead late in the third period after a Connor Brown shorthanded goal. The St. Louis Blues had over 40 shots on Frederik Andersen. He played very well, but they tied the game with the goalie, with Carter Hutton pulled. Alex Steen with a rebound, and it was a missed assignment by the Leafs defense. And then in overtime, Mitch Marner, went a little too far into the offensive zone, got caught, and Vince Dunn, a rookie defenseman, came back on a 2-on-1 and beat Anderson for a 2-1 victory. Now, the Leafs have lost 3 games in a row, all by excruciating fashion. Morgan Riley with an intercepted stretch pass. Columbus tied the game late. A giveaway against Ottawa late gave the Senators a 4-3 victory, and now this loss. They've gone 500 since December 1st. On a 6-game homestand, they went 2-2-2. And Peter, after the game, on my way back to my car in Burlington, I had a chance to collect my thoughts, and I'm like, the Leafs basically over the last, I would say, 2 months have went from that wide open offensive style that they played most of last year, tried to play in the playoffs and got shut down to an extent by Washington. And then the first month of this year, they've gone to what I term playoff style hockey, which is what Mike Babcock calls playing the right way. Limit the offensive chances of your opponent. I personally think they're playing that way because they realize their defense is not up to snuff, and they're trying to limit the other team's scoring attempts. They allowed over 40 shots. They allowed a number of scoring chances against the Blues. So it's working, but it's not working that great. They're still relying a lot on Frederik Andersen to make big saves, and then they make 1 or 2 errors, and because they're not scoring goals right now, those errors are lethal.
Right, absolutely. But again, just as in the past, so much you read about the Leafs right now is about player usage decisions, right? The criticism, why is Babcock using this guy? Why is he giving this guy so many nights? And I guess the question I would ask is 57 seconds left in the game. Why is Hainsey out there trying to take on Steen?
Hainsey's on their top defensive pairing.
Exactly. And Hainsey's overtime, he doesn't have the wheels. And, he's your depth defenseman. He's not your guy who's out there to prevent goals. And so, I can understand why there's the Leafs fans, Leafs Nation is upset and questioning things. And as I mentioned to you previously, so much of what I see with the Leafs this year is sort of the flip of what I saw with the Jets last year, where they were willing to give up a year for Maurice to coach the way he wanted to let these young players learn.
Right.
They're very similar teams in certain aspects of who they have, their youth, where the youth is. I think the Jets are a deeper team, but it's not that the Leafs aren't good. The Leafs just have way better goaltending, and they arguably have a top 5 player in the league right now in Matthews, who is better than simply just scoring goals. Yes. He makes up for a lot of mistakes. So if anyone knows Mike Babcock, and all of Canada should know him. You've watched what he's done in 2 Winter Olympics. He plays that kind of hockey because he knows he can win games with it.
Right.
The difference between the Olympics and the NHL is you have the best of the best of the best on Team Canada.
Right.
Right now, he doesn't have the best of the best. And there's where the holes come in. But I think he's got to let them – there's some logic to this, but it's long-term logic.
Russ, they have. I agree with the philosophy that Babcock is using right now. You've got to have players, young players like Nylander, like Marner, learn that two-way game. They have to play that way if they're going to have success in the future in the postseason. You can't be, a one-zone player because you're going to eventually get killed. But the problem is that right now, they're learning and they're making mistakes. He's using veteran players who he has trust in, guys like Komarov. He's using over 20 minutes a game. He's using Polak a lot more than people thought he was going to, and he doesn't trust the kids as much. But the problem is that these players are expending so much energy and so much effort in the defensive zone to just play average defensively that by the time they get the puck and go the other way, they have no zip left, or they have so few opportunities. They're not scoring those goals.
Okay, so here's the way I look at it, and I get what Peter's saying, and Peter's right, and I get what you're saying, and you're right. I look at things logically though, and say, okay, for last night, for the 18 or more minutes that Zach Hyman played, what are we looking at for a career high for Matt Hyman in goals? Do you know what his career high is so far?
11, 12 goals.
10.
Yeah.
And this year he's got 7. So he's right on his pace. He'll probably exceed his career number and get 12, right? Now, Marner last year at 19, he's got 5.
Mm-hmm.
He's not even going to get to 19 unless he has an unbelievable hot streak or Mike Babcock takes off the shackles. So that's probably not going to happen. William Nylander he's literally half the points he was last year. Now he's a plus 11. So his coach is probably happier with his all-around game, but it's also affecting his offense. Now, his shooting percentage isn't down to the degree that Marner's is, but it's down from like 10.7 to 8.5. It is affecting their offense, and that's 2 big keys on their offense. So, while you're giving more ice time to the safer play of Hyman, you're diluting your offense because he's not going to score that much.
Mike Babcock, and this is the same thing that Babcock did in Detroit. He played guys like Luke Glendening and Riley Sheehan on scoring, or Justin Abdelkader on scoring lines. And there is something to that. I mean, Hyman is a guy who goes in the corner, who digs out the puck and gets it to Matthews. It's been effective. Hyman's not the problem. The problem is
but the amount of ice time that he gets is a problem.
Is the problem.
But see, the thing is, I don't think you're ever going to change that with Babcock. I think Hyman. I can see Hyman being on Matthews' line as long as Chris Kunitz was on Crosby's line. That's where he's
Kunitz
going.
Was way more of a scorer than
I know. I'm not comparing the two in terms of their offensive abilities. I'm just saying, certain Pascal Dupuis play. He wasn't a great player. He just fit well with Crosby. Babcock buys into Hyman digging out the puck for Matthews. He's put Marner with Matthews. He lasted 2 or 3 games. They took him off the line. They moved Nylander off of there. They put Connor Brown on there. They bring Nylander back. So their problem is right now, Nazem Kadri has 1 goal and no assists in the last 17 games.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. We're to play the Price is Right, higher or lower.
Okay.
For Matt Martin, for his ice time in January, is it more than 7 minutes or less than 6 minutes on average?
More than 7 minutes.
It's 5:54.
Really?
Matt Martin is not the problem.
It is the problem. He's
I think
roster spot.
To Russ's point, though.
Hold on. When you can't score goals, Matt Martin taking up a roster spot, only playing 5 minutes a game for the 2 hits and whatever he's going to put out on the ice is not worth it.
I disagree.
Point, you're just dealing with ice. There's only 60 minutes in a game, and you can only have 5 skaters out for the majority of the game. It's a finite commodity. How you use that finite commodity is going to dictate what you do on the ice based on your roster. So if Mike Babcock wants Zach Hyman to be the kind of player that goes in so Matthews doesn't have to go. And it was Matthews who got absolutely abused on that shift last night, right? Where he got tripped, knocked over. If he doesn't want Matthews being abused, it's Lamarillo's job to find a better Zach Hyman.
Or to find a Zach Hyman who's 6'4" and can keep but
to find a better guy who can do what Zach Hyman does, but is better. Like that's the depth in an organization. And right now, Babcock's got two choices. He can teach Hyman to be that kind of player, and to teach him, you got to let him go out there and fail, or he can get a different player. And unless Lamarillo brings in a different player, or they find someone magically in the organization, he's only got those two choices. So, I mean,
we'll get off this game. And
I want to mention something to Broken Narcissist, who is saying that I'm not looking at the underlying numbers from Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner has become this year's version, because every year it'll change, a pass-first player. He's almost afraid to shoot at times. I've watched a lot of Mitch Marner.
More in the first, I'd say 25 games, he's been a lot better recently. But last night and this is the thing, he overhandled the puck. He did the dipsy do. And I don't think he played a smart game. But a lot of the Leaf players last night were doing the same thing. Nazem Kadri, something is off. He may be injured, but 1 goal in 17 games. He's a main cog on their power play. Their power play has gone down dramatically in the last 6 weeks. So I think there's a lot of things that are unsettled, but I just don't get the impression that the Leafs are going to be able to or are willing to go out there before the deadline and make any kind of moves. This is why, and I advocated this in a column on the weekend, Peter. I said, if you're pretty much locked in the third place unless there's an 18-wheeler going off the cliff. Yeah. If you're stuck in third place, you're going to play Boston in the first round. Maybe you beat them. I don't think you're beating Tampa Bay. If you don't think you can go that far, then what the hell are you holding on to Van Riemsdyk, Komarov, and Bozak? You should trade them and get as much assets for them.
It's because you never know. They're going with that
theory. There's a lot of Leafs fans and look, there's no other fan base that has as many people chiming in on the Leafs on a team as the Leafs do, whether different blogs, media, you name it. And there's enough of them that say with the contracts they have, the value they have, the Leafs should be going all in.
Yeah.
Because of where they are in their contract cycle and their youth cycle. So if they go all in, you don't want to be giving up too much. You want to spend things because you've got your depth.
Yeah, no,
but that's one of the reasons too that is coming into factor into this.
And if you can re-sign Van Riemsdyk, which there's speculation that they might be able to, depending on if they can get Nylander on a bridge deal, then you keep him instead of trading him because you'll probably never get him back. But guys like Bozak, guys like Komarov, I don't know if they're going to bring them back. So. If you're a team that is going at the most to the second round of the playoffs, I think it makes a lot of sense to move those players out for assets. Anyway, hey, Ak, what's going on?
Hey, how are you guys doing? Sorry about the delay. Got a lot of stuff going on here, but I'll just jump in a couple of things.
We talked about the Crawford vertigo situation. So I know you put up on your blog some stuff.
Yeah, I'll give you my 2 cents on it. Just talking to people. There was an article written by someone in the Hockey News I read this morning that said that he didn't think that the Hawks should make a trade, should go for a goalie or anything like that, or just ride it out. Sorry, I have a bad cold. Anybody who thinks that might be right, but that's not what Chicago will do. Chicago is definitely going to go after a goalie. This is a team that not making the playoffs is not an option for the Blackhawks. But from what I was told, their budget's written.
But they traded for Anton Forsberg.
I know. No, I know.
He's a goalie.
He's a goalie.
Okay.
And,
yeah. So right now they have Anton Forsberg, JF Berube, and Jeff Glass.
Right.
Sorry. If you're a Hawks fan, that doesn't make you feel great.
It's not making the playoffs, put it that way. That's not making the playoffs. And when you talk to people in Chicago, and I think this is true from the a few games I've seen this year from Chicago, the Hawks aren't even in the playoff run, if it isn't for Crawford. The Crawford's been, really good, especially
he was having a massively great year.
Early on. So you take him out of this situation, and they are, 10 points out, and a totally different situation altogether. So they need to pick up somebody. The three players I wrote about, all are available, all are possible. In Robin Lehner, Michael Neuwirth, and Jaro Halak. And all three of them have, Lehner has less playoff experience than the other two, but he might have the biggest upside.
I didn't extol the virtues of Halak very well, X. So you may have to, say stuff despite what I think of Jaro Halak.
You actually presented Halak very well, which is why he's expendable for the. You made a case for what X saying, actually, Russ.
Well, okay.
Yes, if Chicago thinks they can turn them around.
It makes sense. It makes sense in a sort of domino effect. If the Islanders trade for Lehner, they're looking to dump Halak's contract. It's an expiring contract. Crawford would go on LTIR, so it would not take any chicanery to move cap room around. You could just trade for Halak, whose contract I think is a little under $5 million, which is So it would work. It would be a stopgap. I just don't know. This is not Halak of 2010. This is Halak of 2018, and he's not very good anymore.
Well, he's also been up and down, and he's been on the Islanders team that's up and down too. So it's hard to really say. It's really hard to. The memories will go to him playing the Olympics, playing with Montreal. He played some really good key games. He played some big games. He was really good in Vancouver again, 2010. But he was really good in the Olympics in Vancouver. And he was really good in the playoffs, obviously. And the question is, can he get that kind of magic in a bottle again? And a lot of people think
they have better defense, but they don't even have better defense.
Right, they don't have a better defense. I know.
Could they trade for Antti Niemi or maybe Pavlik?
Yeah. Pavlik's not going anywhere, obviously. Niemi is not playing anywhere, obviously. So, no, I think that
Niemi's still getting paid.
In some ways, Michael Neuwirth might make the most sense for them, honestly.
Yeah, but do you think Philadelphia? Do you think Philadelphia, while they're still within a reasonable different distance of a playoff spot, they're going to mess with the goaltending situation?
I think they've already messed with it to the point where I think if they traded Neuwirth, nobody would say anything at this point.
What Russ said, I didn't understand leaving Elliott in as long as they did yesterday at all. I don't understand playing Elliott.
I brought it up this morning on SiriusXM. I said, they've pushed this Elliott thing so far that Neuwirth is completely out of the mix now. He really is.
Are we sure that Lindy Ruff is not on the coaching staff of the Philadelphia Flyers? Because this is what Lindy did in Buffalo with Ryan Miller. He played him to death.
It feels weird and it feels conspiracy. There's a lot of conspiracy theories flying around Philadelphia about it, of course. But the fact of the matter is Neuwirth, they throw him in there and he's played he's only played a few games this year, but his numbers aren't terrible. Again, they're just not terrible.
He hasn't played.
But he's also got another year next year. I'm going to throw out an idea.
Yeah, but it's very cheap. It's a cheap
2.5. But Chicago's got cap issues. They're going to have cap issues till they don't have them. Sure. I'm going to throw out a thought. It's a bit of a wag, but it plays on historical history between two clubs, their relationship. The Jets need some experience. They're about to go into a playoff run with one guy who has deep playoff experience in Dustin Byfuglien.
Right.
Probably not the one guy you want having all the experience. They need some playoff experience. What if you flipped Michael Hutchinson for Patrick Sharp?
I don't think Chicago could afford to do that right now, even though Sharp is not the same. They're starting to get a little mileage out of him. I don't think they would even do it.
I thought for a second, Peter, I thought you were going to say Michael Hutchinson for Brent Seabrook, and Stan Bowman would say, deal, click.
Yeah, click.
I don't think there's any way that Winnipeg would help out Chicago in this situation. Because Chicago is the team that could probably play. Chicago is looking like a team that they might end up playing, And
listen, Winnipeg could sign Brian Giunta after the Olympics. He has experience, Peter.
Yeah. And there's
he does. That's true.
I think that now I have heard a lot. The other rumor I want to throw out there, I mentioned yesterday, I believe. All days are starting to blur together for me a little bit. But I've been hearing it a lot. Is the idea of Patrick Maroon to the Kings? It's not a big deal, but it is the kind of deal that from the person I talked to in LA said, the idea is the Kopitar brown maroon line. That's what they've been thinking about. They think
why is Edmonton doing this?
Why is Edmonton doing this?
Because they're not going to re-sign Maroon.
Why wouldn't they re-sign him? He's been a value for them. He's been really good for them.
He's probably going to ask for more money than they think he's a value for.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot. I mean, there are so many different opinions on Patrick Maroon's ability, right? I mean, he really has been all over the map. But he's been. I agree with you. He's been one of the more consistent players there.
He really has been. I mean, I don't know if I'm Peter Chiarelli. No matter what the raise is, I don't know if I could afford to lose Patrick Maroon while I am still, hard to believe, struggling for offense in the Edmonton world.
I think it depends a little bit on Edmonton also is not a team that is yet in sell mode. I mean, I have a good source there, and I keep talking to them, and they're not in sell mode. They really are still.
Yeah,
they can turn this around.
I think that's basically like that's lip service, because every time they win a game, they take a step back. They've won a few games in a row, and they're not gaining any ground in the West. They would have to have one of those like 15-2 winning streaks to really get back into it. This team is dramatically flawed.
It depends on how you look at Edmonton in terms of like, okay, did you think Edmonton from last year? We all thought Edmonton from last year was pretty good. We all thought they were going to be. We all thought they were on the right path. Mm-hmm. We all picked them to make the playoffs. We all thought that they would be maybe even a force. Some people picked them to go to the finals. Do you abandon that ship completely based on like a year that you could say and then just tear it apart, or do you say, okay, this is just a bad year? We don't have this deepest issue. The issues aren't as deep as you're saying, Mike. The way Edmonton's looking at it, Edmonton's a city that has always loved its players. Like they love it. They love their players, and they don't like to break their teams apart easily.
Right, but we're not.
Ask this though.
Go ahead.
Ask this. If you're Kevin Lowe and you're Daryl Cates and you're trying to figure out what the hell is going on with your organization,
right?
Are you saying this year's the anomaly or last year's the anomaly?
Right. That's the question.
That's what you have to figure out first.
You're saying this year is the anomaly.
I don't know what's the anomaly, but I would say if you take out last year and you look at all the other years before it, last year's the anomaly.
They're a lot like this year. I know. Right? If you go based on the last 5 years, what year doesn't belong? It is last year.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with that totally, but they are making steps.
The Kings don't have that many assets, Zach. They're not going to give up Cale Clague. If I'm Edmonton, I'll ask for Jared Anderson-Dolan and a pick.
Let me open up my text and I'll tell you what the deal was.
And if they're willing to give me Jared Anderson-Dolan, I'll think about it, because that's at least a center who's only 18, who's in his fourth year, believe it or not, in the Dub, and probably will play one more year there, and then he could. It wouldn't even shock me if he went straight to the NHL. He's a smart kid.
These are the names. Who's I don't know Ledoux. I have to say Ledoux.
Okay, I don't think that he's worthy of Patrick Maroon.
All right, no, but it's Ledoux.
We're talking rental here, Russ. We're talking UFA.
Clifford. Okay, Ledoux and Clifford. And a second round pick. That was the rumor.
Boy, I would never do that. Never. Not even a chance.
You wouldn't do that for which team?
I wouldn't do it if I'm Edmonton. There's no way. I don't care if he's an expiring deal. I would rather roll the dice and try and re-sign him than take that shipload.
You can re-sign him in the summer. You can re-sign him in the summer. See, Russ, this is.
Yeah, but I'm not getting anything. Mike, what am I getting out of that deal?
They're not okay. This is the thing with Edmonton. They're not talking about moving foundation pieces. They're not talking about moving Puljujarvi or Yamamoto or not even mention.
I have news for you. I don't think Edmonton knows what's a foundation piece.
They've done that, and they've screwed up each time they've done it.
They're talking about moving expiring contracts.
If Edmonton was in any more of a corner, the walls would close in on them. Actually, the walls are closing in on them. That's how tight this corner space is getting right now. And because they've tried to do things to make the team better. They've tried to address needs. They've traded foundation players. They've traded people that as X said, like the fans love their players. So Edmonton loves their players. They've traded those loved players, and they still can't get it right. Like there's a fear now in that organization of making the wrong deal. And the only way you can get out of that cycle is you clear the decision makers out. Well, and that includes Kevin Lowe.
Yeah. But the thing is, and I agree with that, but if Peter Chiarelli is on shaky ground you will still allow him to make deals like this that are rental deals. You will not allow him to trade, say, a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, because that's a deal that has future ramifications. Getting a second-round pick and a prospect or two for Patrick Maroon, or trading Mark Letestu at the deadline, if he can't do that, then he doesn't belong in management in any NHL.
Okay, here, Mike, let's just break this down. And I can get more than Paul Leduc. I can.
Okay.
Paul Leduc is a 25-year-old defenseman who played 22 games so far for the Kings. Even with Ontario this year, he's got 17 points in 34 games. Like, he is the middling of middling defensemen at 25 years old. Like, for Edmonton, I'm not even sure he cracks Edmonton's lineup.
He's more a stay-at-home guy. I thought he was more of a stay-at-home guy. I might be wrong.
I don't believe he's a stay-at-home guy, but even if he is,
I might be totally wrong. I don't know. I don't know. I heard he wasn't a scorer, and they actually thought his numbers were pretty good.
No, I think he's more of a puck mover for what I remember him.
Okay.
But let's say they even changed him over to a stay-at-home. Boy, Eck, he's 25 years old. He's maybe never even going to play for the Oilers.
Okay. Do you have any size?
Not enough to take. There are teams that I can get more out of than that.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so I think that, the one thing I will say is LA, I do believe is going to be, I think they're still hanging on to being buyers right now.
I don't think there's any argument there, Ak. It's just what would they buy?
Yeah.
Right. It's gonna be selective buying, and it's gonna be somebody who has a limited cap hit, and that's because they're right up against it. I mean, when Carter comes back, they're right back to where they were. They saved some money probably putting him on LTIR, but they don't have a ton of room. Even with the Iafollos and the younger guys being called up, they still don't have a ton of room. So maybe Maroon at $1.5 million is about all they can really fit in.
Yeah, it might be. I mean, Maroon is reasonable.
But he's also got 11 goals and 24 points. Like, Kimmo Timonen on one leg got more in a deal than what you just offered for Patrick Maroon. That's why I'm saying it's crazy.
Right, Russ. But there have been other deals out there where a guy who helped the team was traded for next to nothing. What about Marian Gaborik when he was traded from Columbus to LA? I mean, you can't.
Columbus just wanted to dump him, though. That's a different story.
Right.
Edmonton doesn't want to dump Maroon.
But I think they realize that maybe they can't sign him for what he's going to be looking for after scoring over 20 goals last year playing with McDavid. He's not playing with McDavid anymore. It's Puljujarvi and Lucic playing with McDavid now. So this
is how pathetic. All right, let's just break open this little veil here with the Edmonton Oilers. This is how pathetic the goal scoring is for the Edmonton Oilers. Patrick Maroon is tied for third on the team in goals. Nugent-Hopkins has 16 goals. He's 1. McDavid is 2, and then Draisaitl and Maroon have 11 goals each.
Yeah, I know.
I think crazy.
No, it is ridiculous. I mean, there's a lot of things that are ridiculous right now in the NHL, but that's definitely one of them.
That's one of them.
I mean, there's a couple of things they're just crazy. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and we were trying to come up with a time. Okay, so who leading the divisions right now? This is just a fun little thing. You've got Winnipeg. You've got Vegas, you've got Tampa, and Washington. So find a time in the NHL history where you've had 4 teams that have played less years in the NHL than that. You're looking at not only obviously Vegas is a 1-year team, but Winnipeg's only been there for how many years now? 8.
So is the
7.
season.
Okay, right, 8. Tampa is not an old team at all. And Washington's been there
25 years. And
right, but
Washington's been there for 42.
Yeah, Washington's been there for 40, but that's just an amazing thing when you think about the difference. I mean, there aren't that many. We're talking about 3 of the top 10 youngest teams in the NHL in Tampa and all that. So, there's a lot of craziness going on. So I don't know which way that's going to play. Quick thing.
Although I will tell you this: the funniest quote I saw yesterday was George McPhee saying, "Well, if we could hang on, like he's now downplaying a good season. Like, it's really funny the way."
No, I know. You knew that was going to come. You knew that there has to be a point at which he's going to do that thing. He's going to because he has to stay. The scary thing about Vegas is you can't let them become favorites.
Right.
Like, you can't let them start to think, because it was funny last night I'm watching the Predators Vegas game because the Rangers Flyers game was just god awful. And I'm watching
depends how you look at it, but
pretty bad. It was even the Rangers didn't even play that well, and they
There's a few people in the chat room that disagree, but I get you.
So anyway, I'm watching that game, and the Predators announcers are coming on and saying, it's great that it's so much fun tonight to watch two of the best teams in hockey playing each other. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is, Vegas can't start thinking of themselves as one of the best teams in hockey. And, I go back to what, the really trusted scout of mine said, a trusted scout that I know said to me, sorry, I'm on too much cold medicine, said to me the other day, and that is, Vegas is having a hell of a year, but do they have a playoff level on that team? Or are we seeing their playoff level?
Right, we might be. That's true.
And that I think is very merited. I think that's because we know you're starting to see. Last night, I felt like you saw the Rangers start to shift into their playoff level. Like it's getting later, so the Rangers have. I think
there was some of that. I'll agree with that.
And there are certain teams that'll start playing with that other level, and that will change. The NHL will change because of it. Their teams will find that other gear. Nashville's one of those teams too. Like they have another level. So, but then there's teams like Winnipeg and Vegas who haven't seen the playoffs very often. And we don't know if they and when they have seen, haven't seen any success in the playoffs in Winnipeg. So, do they have another level, or are we seeing the best that we will see out of them? Is this it? That's the question.
The one thing Vegas has going for them that a lot of teams don't is now that Fleury's healthy, presumably staying healthy, he can be that leader to get these guys to play at a playoff level.
Oh yeah, no, he can do a lot, but I don't know if he can do that. I mean, I don't know if
he can play at a playoff level.
He's won 3 Stanley Cups
for sure.
Yeah, I think he can do that as a goalie. Yeah. Look, there's a very few positions in sports where you actually can do that. As a quarterback in the NFL, you absolutely can do it, and as a goalie in the NHL, you absolutely can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. He can just do little things around the rink in his preparation. Yeah. He can talk to guys, even when if he's got a day off.
Him and Neil. I mean, Neil, we don't want to take away. Neil's also been a winner.
No, absolutely. But I mean, to the earlier point, George McPhee is playing the success of Vegas like a Stradivarius right now.
He is. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons to criticize George McPhee over the years, and he's deserved some of it, some not so often. But right now, is there a GM out there playing, and no one's in a situation, but he's managing this better than I ever expected him to.
Yeah.
And it's
great. I mean,
there are some GMs. I talked to somebody about the other day, and I really agree with this point. There are some GMs that are better without superstars. You've seen that. I've seen that throughout time. I think
he had superstars, so we can't say that.
No, but what I'm saying is, he had superstars, but he never got it done, right?
All I can say, Ak, is that Russ and I were in Chicago the couple nights before the NHL draft, and we're all sitting around listening to the selections of the Vegas Golden Knights, and we're saying this is going to be the worst friggin' team in the league by a long shot.
Yep.
And now
nothing could be less true.
Yeah.
Obviously, it shows a lot of things, and it shows a lot about the sport of hockey in general. Like the what confidence does for hockey is incredible. Like a confident hockey team, no matter what level, it seems like can beat. This is what you've seen. You just have a team that believes in themselves in Vegas, and they thrive in the underdog role. They're confident. I mean, what was the worst loss they've had all year? I was trying to remember. Like they haven't been like
a loss to Detroit early in the year at home. I think they're like 17-2-1 or 18-2-1 at home. So that I think was the worst loss.
Yes, they actually. But it was like 3 or 4 goals. It wasn't like
Yeah, it was like 6-2, 7-2, something like that.
Right. Like we all expected there to be lots of those type of games for them, and there haven't been.
Look, we knew McPhee could do a good job. We all know what he's capable of, but we have to remember a lot of GMs could have done a good job. When you're a GM that takes over a blank slate, it's so much easier. And I'm going to give you the example. He had to make that Philip Forsberg for Martin Erat trade. There wasn't one person on earth who really thought that was a good trade, but because Alex Ovechkin was asking for somebody, he had to come up with somebody, and he did because he was desperately trying to win a Stanley Cup. That made George McPhee look horrible, right? Now, just a couple of years later, he looks like a genius. I'm telling you, there's a lot of GMs under the way this system has worked out that would look like a genius. They would.
We have to
It has a lot to do with the way he does things too. And I think, I mean, him and Poyle, remember, came up the same way. You know, Poyle is the same kind of, they both were in Washington for a while together. Poyle did really well without superstars in Nashville.
And he was happy to get Philip Forsberg too.
Yeah, you're right. There's just a lot out there, you know, that you see of this kind of stuff. So I think that, I mean, I wonder, you know, I mean, with Winnipeg, I feel like there's a better chance that they have a playoff level because there has some experience there. They have gone there. Even though they've lost, they've been there. But with Vegas, I'm really curious as to what that's going to be. You know, of how they're going to show up. Like, say they draw Chicago in the first round. Like, say they draw the Blackhawks in the first round. What then? You know, like, I mean, how can you possibly
for Winnipeg? I'm not worried if I'm Winnipeg. I think. You know what? I think Paul Maurice.
No, say Vegas draws Chicago in the first round.
Oh, if Vegas draws them, they're in trouble.
Yeah,
but I was gonna say for Winnipeg, Paul Maurice is their playoff leader. He's the guy with all of the scars. I've always looked at him as a solid coach. I know people for the last couple of years have been really, you know, trying to dismiss him. He is a really good NHL coach. He is, and always will be.
Okay.
I know we've got to get going here. So the one thing I'll just leave with this one little quick thought, and then we'll get out of here. You know, as much as Marc-Andre Fleury, I don't want to, not trying to downplay Vegas or anything like that, but as much as Marc-Andre Fleury has playoff experience, he also has shown in the past that when his team doesn't play well in front of him in the playoffs, he tries to do too much, and he can be a disaster in the playoffs. So remember, if Vegas struggles, Fleury will try to do too much. That will happen, and then we'll have situations like that. That's where Marc-Andre Fleury in the playoffs can be a problem. Just a thought.
Okay. All right.
All right, Mike. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Back again tomorrow. Figure out a time. I'm thinking it's going to be probably. We'll talk about it later. Probably 1 o'clock if possible, or if we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. Okay.
Remember that the buzz is just hockey. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Peter.
Hey, thanks.